Alrighty, hello everybody and welcome to the first video of my new channel. Um, it's not going to be exclusively about Oxygen Not Included, in case you were curious, since we are sitting on the main menu for that. Essentially this is going to be a vlogging channel. My name is Remy, and what I wanted to talk about, and playing the game in the background kind of helps me remain calm while doing this, is that I am a high-functioning autistic individual, and I had a really strange childhood, and I was diagnosed very late in life. I'm 29, and I was diagnosed when I was 27. And the only reason why I was diagnosed in the first place was that I was really struggling and having some major difficulties with my job, and it was really depressing, and I wanted to know that I wasn't crazy and that my emotional swings and difficulties and anxiety that was building up had a legitimate cause. So I went to see a psychologist, and yeah, literally just opened up with, tell me I'm not crazy, and then started to explain some of my experiences, and she was able to share very similar experiences from some of her other clients or patients that sure enough were on the spectrum. And yeah, that was essentially how I discovered very late in life that I was autistic. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around what exactly that means. And one thing is for certain is it at least explains to me why I feel so alone all the time. Just as a little background, I have a very small group of friends that I keep in contact with online exclusively. In person, or at least in the same city, I should say, I have maybe 4 or 5 friends um, that I see 2 or 3 times a year. And otherwise, I have a girlfriend that I've been with and lived with for 5 years now. She is amazingly supportive. She's done everything she can to assist me in figuring myself out and joining me on this journey, and I absolutely love her. Also, I love this randomly generated name. And while all that is absolutely fantastic, I always feel alone. And I think in large part that comes from the inability to express who I am on my own. To explain a little bit further on that concept, I'm not entirely certain if this is the case with all people with Asperger's or autism. High-functioning autism essentially is the same thing as Asperger's, so I use them interchangeably. But what I do is I don't learn social cues passively, or the way some people put it is through osmosis. If you put a baby in a room with some people, the baby's going to pick up on all the cues and slowly learn how to communicate with someone, and they don't even have to think about it, they just naturally pick up on these things. I don't. I am worse than a baby. I have to actively pay attention, and it is extremely draining and tiring to do so in order to figure out just what the hell I'm supposed to be doing on a day-to-day basis, and what you need from me in order to have a reasonable interaction where you don't get offended and I don't get offended. And it's complicated and I barely understand it. I'm sure it makes perfect sense to a lot of you, but to me it's as difficult as being in a foreign nation, not speaking the language, and trying to ask anything really, like not even where the bathroom is. I mean, I feel like you could probably mime that pretty well. Anyway, getting off topic. So because I interpret things differently, I'm already at a handicap. But because of my quote-unquote interesting childhood, I have more of a handicap than I think most people with Asperger's have. And to kind of give some backstory into that, it's important to know, oh, sorry, I'm a little sniffly. It's important to know that I have moved 29 times, which is also how old I am. And if that's not a red flag, I don't know what is. So even in the absolute best conditions with someone who is very well adjusted, if you move 29 times, you're going to have difficulty socializing. Essentially, that averages out to moving once a year, sometimes twice a year. It didn't always work out that way. Sometimes we stayed in one place longer. Sometimes we, only stayed for a couple of months. Whatever the case, I never really had the opportunity to learn consistent social cues from a consistent group of peers, which is it's an interesting handicap, to be sure. Essentially, I don't know what I'm missing in life. I like to say that I am an approximation of human. I am good enough. I function well enough that in person, I absorb whatever you're giving me. If you're giving me attitude, I'm going to give you attitude. If you're giving me kindness, I give you kindness. However you interact with people around you while I'm watching you is how I'm going to interact with you and probably with the other people. I'm a sponge. And that's me learning through mimicry and not through osmosis. Like, it's not natural to me, and it is extremely draining. So I actually don't know if I'm introverted or extroverted. I feel like I may actually be an extrovert, even though I am extremely quiet and I keep to myself a lot. And I think in large part that has to do with the fact that it's so difficult to learn these cues and to function on a social level, that all the energy that I'm getting from these social interactions is immediately being drained, and I'm losing all that power. It's so weird. So yeah, I'm an approximation of human, which is kind of funny because some people, or at least that's definitely I wouldn't necessarily call it a misnomer, but a stereotype of people with autism is that we're robots. We're incapable of emotion, when exactly the opposite is true. We are highly emotional, and yeah, why is my nose so stuffy? So yeah, we're highly emotional, and we have extreme difficulty in regulating those emotions because of how difficult it is to interact in a social setting. There's just so many faux pas that we don't understand and we make on such a frequent basis that it's impossible for us to not freak out, to have anxiety, to feel fear or that pressure, and just on on any interaction. Like, if you were to ask me to make a phone call, I would rather chop off my hand. I was watching a really good interview with someone with Asperger's the other day, that was talking about when he went to his therapist, or on a psychologist, whoever it was, with his wife, and um, in order for the therapist to make sure that the wife understood what it felt like for him to make a phone call, she asked the wife to stand up, and she did, and then immediately told her to sing the first like 4 lines of the national anthem. Imagine that kind of social pressure and that kind of spontaneity just being slapped in your face on a frequent basis. Um, and everyone else is like, it's no big deal. Why aren't you doing it? What's wrong with you? And you're just crippled in fear and paralyzed because you weren't anticipating this. You didn't know to expect this. You weren't prepared for this. And you're freaking out. And yeah, that's essentially what my day-to-day life is like. Um, and that's kind of why I wanted to make this channel, is because of having all this difficulty and because I'm a sponge, I feel like I never actually get to interact with people and be myself at the same time, because I'm always absorbing and reflecting what I'm being given. Whereas if I do this in kind of a vlog-esque gaming channel pseudo format, the only reason why I'm not doing a blog is that I'm not comfortable being on camera. There's no interaction, and there's nothing being given to me, short of whatever attitude these guys give me, for me to reflect. And I kind of like that, because I actually don't really know who I am as a person. and I feel like this channel can help me discover more about myself, and maybe even help me discover new people or approximate what I'm missing and, better my my humanity, essentially, trying to figure out how best to appear normal. When, I mean, I recognize that people will say, being normal is overrated, blah, 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 blah. You don't actually want to be normal, you just want to be accepted. To a degree, yes, but my main interest is I don't know what I'm missing. So I don't know what's expected. I don't know what normal is. So I can't say that I want to be normal. And yeah, I guess I don't really have a point to that thought process either. Um, but yeah, I decided that I wanted to make this channel as a way to reach out and practice on self-discovery and hopefully interact with some people. Whether you comment or not, it's irrelevant. You don't have to by any means. I am actively seeing a psychologist, so it's not like I need this channel as a form of mental health or anything of that nature. I just thought it would be a fun way for me to reach out and potentially make some new contacts. Because, like I said, my social circle is extremely small, and I don't necessarily know what it means to be a human, which is really weird to say as a human. But putting all that aside, I do like entertaining people, which is why I think on some degree I am an extrovert. I don't know, maybe that's unrelated. I think a lot of people like to interact with others and entertain. It's just a matter of whether or not you get energy from doing so or not. But this game in particular is not going to be the only game that I play on the channel. This game is Oxygen Not Included, which you saw. But what can I say about this game? It's definitely a special interest of mine. It's reasonably heavily physics-based. Well, not physics like falling physics, but physics as in everything has like properties down to heat capacity, thermal conductivity, melting points, and I guess chemistry is the better way to describe it. It's a chemistry-based game. Where oxygen is an extremely limited resource. Actually, if you were paying attention, I doubt it because you were probably listening to me drone on without any point. I started with 5 blocks of this oxalite, which emits oxygen whenever the air pressure around it gets to a low enough point for it to sublimate into oxygen. So my oxygen supply is limited. So it is included, but it is limited. And there are other ways to generate oxygen, which I will be doing very shortly. Algae, for instance, can be used to make oxygen in a couple different ways. Water can be used to make oxygen once you've researched a couple of different methods. There are also some plants that generate oxygen. There's also cute little critters in the world, and I will be ranching a couple of them as we go on. First and foremost, though, anytime you make one of these colonies, it is extremely important to start researching by cycle 2, or as soon as possible, essentially, because if you do not, you are going to fall behind the curve because there are many other things that are limited, such as calories. I start out the colony with a certain amount of nutrient bars. You can see I have 16,000 calories, kcalories, available, and I also managed to find some muckroot as I was digging around. Muckroot is non-renewable, it just appears in the world as such. You dig it up, it's essentially a potato, and voila, you have a food source. But these plants, mealwood is a plant that can be grown, bristle blossom is another one. They have different requirements, and they provide different levels of food, as well as a couple of other useful things. Some species of critter also can provide food, like these Drecos. When they die, they give you food, a certain amount of meat. Sometimes there's also ingredients to food, like pinch peppers. They can be used to make better food. And the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want your duplicants to be idle. But that's also the reason why I enabled sandbox mode when I made this colony, because there's a very good chance I am going to get distracted, and I'm not looking to do like a legitimate playthrough and be successful. I am just looking to have fun and hopefully make some new friends along the way. Which sounds super sappy when I say it, but you know what? It's the goddamn truth. I think a lot of people, when they're dealing with mental issues, whether it's disabilities or conditions, syndromes, however you want to describe it, personally, I don't see autism as a condition, a syndrome, or any of those natures. It's simply a different way to perceive the world. I feel like a lot of people feel alone. Like it's when you can't easily explain how your mind works. Like I can't say my mind goes from A to B to C. My mind usually goes from A to A1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Z2. Z2 just popped out of nowhere because it's somewhat related to A14. And then I go to H5 and it just keeps going all over the place. It's an impossible outline to follow. It's very, very difficult to feel like someone gets you. And when you don't have that feeling, you know, no matter how much you interact with them, even if you have a great time with them, it's difficult to feel content. It's difficult to feel like you belong. And that further goes towards my kind of insistence that I'm an approximation of humanity. I don't necessarily feel like I belong. And at times, it's, I don't know, it actually kind of hurts to say that, but you know what, it needed to be said. Like, it's true. Gee, that's a heavy sentiment when I stop and think about it. Then again, so is naming your colony the Doomed Facility. That's a heavy sentiment in and of itself. Yeah, no, I just feel alone. It's difficult for me to associate with people and to explain how I feel, and I feel like if I can't explain how I come to thoughts and processes and things like that, then I must come off as absolutely insane. Like, I'm sure I'm rambling, so not a whole lot of this makes particular sense, but as an example, maybe that's not the best example. I was going to say that whenever I'm watching TV and I particularly really like commercials. A lot of people find them quite annoying, obviously because it's just shilling a product and they can get pretty obnoxious. But for me, I particularly like commercials with special effects. The most common would be car commercials. And the reason why is because they spark creativity in me. When I see special effects, and commercials are just the most frequently visible ones, my mind likes to jump to justifying those special effects as if they were a real world thing. For instance, there was a car commercial for a Mercury Mariner, I believe, back in, gee, I want to say like 2002, 2003. So I was 12 or 13 when I saw this car commercial. It's old. And the whole commercial was probably like 20 seconds. It has a woman walking across a barren field, and she's holding the car logo, and she takes it, and she places it in the air, and then spins it, and then backs away. And as it spins, it picks up speed, and, you know, neat sound effects, cool special effects. All of a sudden, it creates this magnetic pulse that just flies out, and raw metal starts coming up out of the ground, and it swirls around in this swarm of metal shards, and wouldn't you know it, it slowly forms this car. And in doing so, I became obsessed with the idea of magnetism and being able to pull raw minerals from the earth by magnetism, which is completely bullshit. But it made me think of electromagnets, and you know, other people would just see the commercial like, oh, it's just a dumb car commercial, who cares, and move on with their life. But no, me, I became obsessed, and I started thinking about an electromagnet with a massive power source. What would be a massive power source? Well, Nuclear radiation is a very reliable power source. We've got nuclear reactors. They are one of the safest power sources in the world. So what would happen if we took a massive electromagnet and we powered it with, say, the same power that it would take to detonate a nuclear bomb? So you have a self-contained electromagnet, an electromagnet with a self-contained nuclear bomb inside that's powering it, or a nuclear reaction, fusion reactor, whatever you want to call it, is going on inside. What kind of impact would that have on the world? And the answer is obviously this is not a practical thing, and it would have next to no impact probably because it would destroy itself. But if you suspend disbelief for just a little bit and you stop and think about a high-powered electromagnet deployed in an urban environment, the amount of refined metal in our natural society, I mean, just look at the amount of metal already going on in my colony. If I were to drop a bomb right here, it would rip off all this metal, it would rip up the research station, the battery, the oxygen, this pneumatic door is made out of metal, all of it would just get crumpled up over here and everything in its path would be destroyed. So with all of this raw metal, you get the picture. It's devastating. All of that came from a 30-second TV spot. And my mind figured out all of that in the span of about 2 minutes. It was insanely fast and crazy to say the least. Like, you know, even describing it, I recognize that it's a silly thought and it's definitely not what the average person would experience. But if you were sitting there with me and I just started babbling about, you know, nuclear fusion powered electromagnetic bombs, like, you'd be like, where the hell did all this come from? What the fuck are you talking about? You're insane. Well, yeah, I am. So that, I guess, is the short end of what it's like being me. I'm gonna speed up the game. I'm getting a little bored waiting for them to do things. Okay, good. You finished research. You're still working on that research. And the day is almost over, so now you guys are taking care of your stuff. Okay, good. Well, yeah, see, so now the oxalite that I initially had here is all gone. There is an oxygen overlay, so all of this bright blue means that it's breathable. We have carbon dioxide building up in these pits, which means that I need to make a carbon pit. Typically, carbon dioxide sinks because it's a heavier density gas, while oxygen tends to rise above it. There are many other gases in the game, and each one behaves according to its actual physical properties and chemistry, which is really neat. Water, you know, all the elements respond in those different ways, which is really fascinating. I am getting incredibly frustrated with my nose constantly stuffing up. Ugh. Ugh. Get a drink, I apologize. Whew. Okay, better. Alright, so we're idle. We're researching still. What do we need to do? As soon as that research is done, we're going to start getting food going. We've got our bathrooms going. We've got a bedroom going. What's the room overlay look like? Good. The room overlay is important, or rooms in general are important, because morale is used for duplicate skills. You need morale in order to learn things. So as you can see, if she were to learn advanced research, she would have to have a skill point to learn it, but it would cost 1 of your morale. And if the morale drops too low, but too many things are, you know, learned, like if I had her already taught how to wear exosuits, and her morale, as you can see right now, is too low for that, then her stress would slowly start to build up. Actually, is Jean he or she? I don't know. How dare you assume Duke's gender? Oh, hey, me too. Just because genes are a little slow doesn't mean they can't suffer from soul-crushing existential crises. You are genderless. You are gender X. Awesome. Just out of curiosity, Devin also gender X. This Devin dreams of owning their own personal computer so they can start a blog full of pictures of toast. I get that. Toast is wonderful. And Travaldo's monotonous tone, voice, and lack of facial expression makes it impossible for others to tell when he's messing with them. And he is indeed male. So Travaldo really sounds a lot like me. Like, I don't necessarily have a monotonous tone, but I do know that I don't have a a typical accent for any specific region in America. The longer that I have been here, I live in Ohio at the moment, the more I am starting to have that Midwestern, Northwest, whatever this region is called, the more I'm starting to have that kind of accent. But historically, because I have moved so many times in my life, I have been exposed to many different accents, and you would think that the accent that, or the region that you were born in would be the accent that you have, but that's far from the case for me because I was born in the southeastern United States. Um, I think I've lived in like 13 or 14 different states, the vast majority of which were southern states. Born in Florida, and I definitely do not have a Floridian accent. In fact, I stopped going by the name Jeremy, which is my birth name, specifically because of the Floridian accent. Because when people say Jeremy in a southern accent in general, they say Jeremy, which, I'm not Jeremy. This colony itself is not germy. I'm controlling my germs with wash basin, even though there are a lot of germs down here I need to deal with in the future. But yeah, I prefer to go by Remy, and most of the people I know have been extremely accepting of that. And when you move around so many times, it's very easy to just adopt a new persona, which I think also is partially why I have so much difficulty as an autistic individual, is because constantly changing where you live, yes, you are able to apply what you've learned in new environments and try to adapt and become more neurotypical, but at the same time, because you're not consistently learning those cues, cues can get very confused. Oh, hi, we got some hatches, yay! Hatches are really, really useful. They make coal, they eat stuff, and they poop out coal. I love hatches. And then they sleep during the day. Look at that, that was adorable. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot of plan on what to say. I'm thinking... I don't even know like how long I want to do this video. I may pause it and swap to a different game. Who knows? I don't have high hopes for this colony. Like I said, I'm playing in sandbox mode specifically so that I can just mess around. We got a new duplicate, or okay, so we can print some dirt, or we can take on a fourth duplicate. None of these guys look particularly good. I'll take the dirt. Never have enough dirt. Alright, so we've got 6 mealwood seeds. Let's go ahead and plant these up. There we go. So mealwood has a body temperature requirement of 10 to 30 degrees Celsius, which is perfect because right now my colony is a nice, calm 21.9 degrees Celsius. And it requires fertilization of dirt, which I just got some. There's also plenty of natural bits of dirt that spawn. So all in all, this is a nice start. This definitely is not the kind of start I would normally go for. This is playing on a normal asteroid, and you can have several different types of asteroids. I personally like to play on the Rime asteroid, which is extremely cold. I should open this up so that CO2 can sink. There we go. I'm going to drop all those resources down to the water, but who cares at the moment. I also need to queue up some more research. You would not think that I know as much about this game as I do based on how I play, because I am extremely disjointed and inconsistent with how I play. But I have been following this game since it released into beta probably like 2 years ago, and my girlfriend can attest, I have pages and pages and pages of notes on this game. I am a massive theory crafter, and I absolutely love everything there is about this game. The art style, the gameplay, the strategies, the amount of things that you can automate, the kinds of machines that you can build. There are so many cool things, and I have not tired of it in 2 years, and I don't anticipate it's going to change anytime soon. That being said, however, I am certainly at a loss for what I want to do with myself as I am playing. Go build that up. So now all my CO2 is going to be drifting down to here. So I should actually relocate my food. See, the really neat thing with the way gas mechanics work, since gas tends to filter itself based on weight, is that you can create pits where CO2, carbon dioxide, is going to naturally drift to. If I pull up the oxygen overlay, you can see I have a large amount of oxygen here, and the carbon dioxide is right now pooling here, but now that I've opened this up, you see that the carbon dioxide is starting to sink in, and the oxygen is going to slowly push down on this, and it'll all kind of flow down here. See, now that's a completely carbon dioxide environment, and the pressure is slowly building up as it sifts down there. So, in the interest of keeping my food safe, because food can spoil in this game, I like to, as many people do, build a CO2 pit, and then in that CO2 pit I like to store my food. Let's just, yeah, make 2 tiers here. So by doing this, CO2 creates a sterile environment where food will no longer rot. See, right now it says that my ration box is unrefrigerated, which is true. I think it has to be, yeah, below 4 degrees Celsius in order for it to not spoil. Nutrient bars and muckroot don't spoil, but other food, like the mealwood that I'm going to be growing here, does spoil, and if it's exposed to polluted oxygen or polluted water, then it will spoil faster. It can also get covered in germs, which is definitely not good. Ooh, okay, so that's already some granite, which I need a stronger digger in order to get into. I'm just going to have this set all. I'm going to increase the priority on this because I want my food to go into there at all times, and deconstruct this. I can research more things now. I don't even remember what I just researched. Jumbo battery, good. So another thing that I have definitely learned, it took me a long time to finally get around to playing with automation, but typically people will jump to a coal generator as a power source instead of having duplicates run on a wheel, which is what I'm currently doing. But the best thing that you can do, aside from making it to a coal generator, is to also research this smart battery, this rock crusher, because the rock crusher will give you refined metal, which you need to make the smart battery, and go all the way down here. And very early game, you're also going to want automation wires. Now the reason for that is that if I were to make the coal generator, let's just pop this down right here. So, well, not pop it down, but you can see that it uses 1,000 grams of coal per second, which is reasonable. You can upkeep that with a certain amount of hatches. But it also will continue to use that regardless of whether or not your batteries are full. Because normally you're just going to have a jumbo battery, which stores power. It loses power, so it will store up to 40 kilojoules, and it loses 2 kilojoules every cycle. And it also generates a lot of heat. And you know, these smaller batteries are just as inefficient, and if you're constantly running the generator regardless of whether or not you're using or storing the power, that's wasting fuel. Now if you make this smart battery instead, what it can do is it can send a green signal or a red signal based on the configuration of the logic activation parameters. And basically the way that works with the smart battery is that it will send a signal for the generator to turn on or turn off if the stored power in the battery is below or above a certain percent. That way you are not burning unnecessary fuel, you are only generating the fuel that you need, or you're only generating the power that you need as you need it and not wasting any fuel, which is extremely important. The only problem being that you have to research a lot more because you have to make this out of refined metal, and the same with the automation wires, they require refined metal. You can't just use copper ore like you tend to have in a starting biome, or aluminum ore, or something along those lines. So, in the interest of that, I'm going to go ahead and do this. It's also really important, I think, to either get shine bugs in your colony or get ceiling lights or lamps as soon as you can, especially in tandem with this duplicate motion sensor, because duplicates actually work faster when they're in a lit environment, which is the main reason why I always put my research station right here. If you open up, where is it, the light overlay here, you can see that there is 1,000 lux being created by this portal, and it has a radius of, basically where I built. And that means that anyone that works on this research station is in a lit environment, which actually, yeah, now that I've queued up the research, you can see that he is using the research station, and he has a lit workspace, which actually makes him work 15% faster, which is a very big deal because it can take a long time to do research. You can see it took all that time just to make one research, and Travolta was very happy about that. Alright, perfect. So I have my CO2 pit going, I have my research going. There, you see that's how he's generating power, which uses up whoever's there. They're not free to go and do other things. As long as they're generating power, blah 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 blah, you get the picture. Ooh, there's some nice, ooh, there's a cute little Paku down here. Paku are super great when it comes to generating food. And, ooh, I hear, you hear that rumbling? I don't know if you do, it's pretty low in game, but that means that there is a geyser somewhere around here. I wonder what kind of geyser. Geysers are really important because a lot of resources are limited. There are only a few that are truly infinite. But you can generate so many things from so many other things. And I try to always look at resources as everything is recyclable. Even heat. Heat is actually very important in the game. A lot of people tend to lose colonies because things overheat. For instance, like over here, if you look here, this is 38 degrees Celsius. That's going to be too hot for this mealwood to grow. Actually, yeah, very close. Right now, this temperature, this plant's temperature is 28, so it's only 2 degrees Celsius off from being stifled and unable to grow. And there are plants that grow in different conditions, so it's not unbearable. It's not that you'll be completely hindered by being in a hot area, but everything that you do also generates heat. Like this oxygen diffuser generates heat, this generates heat, the research station generates heat. As I showed you before, the batteries produce heat. And there are ways to delete heat or to adjust heat, but personally I like to shift it to wherever I need it if I can. These lights also produce heat, which is why shine bugs are so important, because they produce light without giving off any heat. Super nice. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've rambled on a lot in this video, and I didn't exactly have a particularly strong idea of what I wanted to do with this colony. Oh yeah, I still have sandbox enabled. I don't want all that unlocked. I only want what I have unlocked available, at least for now. Nah, you know what? I think this was a good starting video to give you an idea of what I'm like, who I am, what this channel is going to be about, and I don't know, maybe I'll record a different episode with a different game. There's a couple different games that I play habitually, probably because I'm just stuck in a rut, who knows. Yay, my research finished and everybody's idle, but I have a skill point available. Gene, you can learn advanced research. Good. I don't think I even researched the advanced research yet. I know about morale. I do not care about tutorials. So yeah, anyway, this has been Oxygen Not Included. I'm Remy. I have high functioning autism. Quick summary of that. And yeah, gonna be interesting to see how this goes. Say hi if you would like in the comments below. I will do my best to be as active as possible responding to them. And no matter what's going on in your life, I hope you have a wonderful day. And if you're struggling at all and you're not sure why, it never hurts to seek help. Go see a therapist, go see a psychologist. If you have insurance, even if you don't, I mean, it's worth it to talk to someone that is trained and understands, and it can make a world of difference. And that's what I'm hoping to do for me by reaching out this way And that's what I hope to be able to do for some other people as well. You never know who's going to watch your videos or who's out there online, and I hope that I find some people that I can help. Alright, that'll be me for the day. Signing out. Bye, guys.